Hello, so I'm going to look at a one reason 5 marker. It is the B question of the exam. So it goes a 1A, which is normally a definition question, outline and explain the meaning of a term. The 1B, that you've also got 8 minutes to answer, offers or gets you to give them one reason for something. So outline and explain one reason why the researcher decided to use focus groups in their research. Now, the best advice I can give you on these questions is to try to refer to the item. It doesn't tell you to, but you must. Try to refer to the item 3 to 4 times. This question requires you to have what the exam board call context. It's not why anybody uses, in this case, focus groups. It's why in this research they did. So we try to reference the item 3 to 4 times. So, dads on dads. In this study aimed to discover how involved dads are in the lives of their families. So the aim is to look at how involved dads are in their families. It also aimed to find out about men's attitudes to fatherhood. Okay, so it is looking at their attitudes as well to fatherhood. And how this role was balanced with work commitments. The researchers conducted 61 highly structured interviews. So they engage in structured interviews. Well, structured interviews are all closed questions. And they produce quantitative methods. So structured interviews are a quantitative method, and they use all closed questions. So they're really helpful in establishing patterns and trends. Probably about their level of involvement, that part. You know, to what extent do they pick their children up? Do they take their children to, I don't know, swimming or lessons? So the structured interviews are all closed questions. They produce quantitative methods, and they will be there to establish patterns and trends. So probably their level of involvement. But the question is on focus groups, which is a qualitative method. But structured interviews closed, and it probably helps us to understand the level of involvement physically. How much do they get up in the night? How many times do they go to their children's parents' evening? Those sorts of things. With men working in a range of different jobs. So it does, if they've given a range of different jobs, I think that's a hint that really that it's representative. That with structured questions, like in those structured interviews, the fact that the sample has a size of 61 makes it more representative. That sample really can account for differences, you know, class, gender, ethnicity, in this case, particularly class for different jobs. So that means they're likely to be able to apply results or generalize. So just trying to pull out as much as we can from this item to help us. They also interviewed the men's partners. Okay. The researchers also held 3 focus groups. Okay, well, that is the question. So I need to kind of look at that. So there's 3 focus groups. To remind myself, well, focus groups are a small group interview of less than 10 people, where the fathers were encouraged to talk in depth. So it's in the focus groups that the dads are encouraged to talk in depth about their attitudes to fatherhood. That's going to have the open questions. It's going to allow them to explore the topic. And not only do focus groups allow them to explore the topic, but they also, it's much more, it's like a natural conversation, a focus group. They're all discussing what it's like in terms of their attitudes to fatherhood. So it's like a natural conversation. And they can prompt each other and kind of jog their memories. So if their children are now, say, 10, they can remind them of what it was like when they were 2 and give examples. They can prompt each other. And this ultimately all really increases the validity. It increases the accuracy or truthfulness of those results. I'm just pulling as much as I possibly can out of the item to help me. In this one reason question, we start it with literally one reason. The researchers used focus groups is to increase the validity. It's my reason. It's to increase the validity. One reason the researchers used focus groups was to increase the validity. The aim, or one of the aims, was to look at men's attitudes to fatherhood. One of the aims was to look at the men's attitudes to fatherhood. Focus groups. Oops, I want to stop highlighting now. Focus groups will allow the dads to explore their attitudes. It will allow the dads to explore their attitudes and provide detail. It will allow the dads to explore attitudes and provide detail, as the questions are all open. It will allow the dads to explore the attitudes and provide detail, as the questions are all open. Focus groups are like a natural conversation. They're like a natural conversation. It means the other dads can prompt each other. It means the other dads can prompt each other and aid memory recall. They can prompt each other and aid memory recall. about balancing, or about their involvement with children when they were young, when they were younger. Men's attitudes to our fathers, it will allow them to explore their attitudes and provide detail as the questions are all open. Focus groups are like a natural conversation. It means the other dads can prompt each other. They can prompt each other and aid memory recall about their involvement with their children when they were young. I'm going to do involvement with children because that's also linked to the item. This increases the validity as the dads can build a rapport or relationship. It can make them feel more comfortable about discussing the challenges of work commitments and fatherhood. It adds the validity as well because they can build a rapport or relationship, and it would make them feel more comfortable about discussing the challenges of work commitment and fatherhood. You know, if they have, I don't know, but like if they have guilt that actually they missed their children's plays, or they miss things because of work commitments, that's a really difficult subject matter to actually discuss. If you do have any guilt, I'm sure parents have a lot of guilt about a multitude of different things, but ultimately it can build a rapport with each other, and that means they can discuss what ultimately is a very personal issue. Discuss the challenges of work commitments and fathers, which is a very personal issue. You know, asking about your parental involvement is quite a challenging thing and quite personal. Okay, one reason they use focus groups was to increase the validity. The aim is to look at attitudes, and a focus group will allow the dads to explore the attitudes and provide details as the questions are all open. They're like a natural conversation. It means the dads can prompt each other. They can aid memory recall about their involvement with their children when they were younger. And this increases the validity as the dads can build a rapport or a relationship with each other. It makes them feel more comfortable about discussing the challenges of commitments of fatherhood, which is a very personal issue. Okay, last bit. The use of focus groups is also used, or focus groups are used because structured interviews would address the aim of involvement, but would not have allowed the researchers. So the focus groups were used because the structured interviews would only address the aim of considering their involvement. How much did they physically do? How many hours? What time? How many plays? So the focus groups would have allowed them to address the aim of the involvement, but it would not have allowed the researchers to address their second aim of the level of involvement. it wouldn't have allowed them to address their second aim, not their level of involvement, of the men's attitudes to fatherhood. It wouldn't have allowed them to look at their second aim of the men's attitudes to fatherhood, because closed questions mean they have to approximate, because it wouldn't have allowed them to address the aims of their attitudes to fatherhood, because the closed questions mean they have to approximate. This does not allow for detail or the respondent's own language and discussion. Okay, focus groups are used also because they use structured interviews. And the structured interviews would have addressed the aim of the involvement. How much did they do? But it wouldn't have allowed them to address the aim of men's attitudes to fatherhood, because the closed questions mean they have to approximate, and it does not allow for detail or the respondent's own language and discussion. So the second aim would not have been met without focus groups. Okay, the reason is to increase the validity. The aim is to look at attitudes. They need a natural conversation they can prompt each other. It can aid memory recall. It can prompt discussion. And it's actually quite a challenging issue. They need some rapport with each other so they feel more comfortable and therefore are more likely to tell us the truth about their really personal experiences. Focus groups were used alongside the structured interviews because really otherwise the second aim wouldn't have been addressed. It wouldn't have been possible. So that's the answer. You can see in the green, I've tried to highlight there where I've referenced the item. As I say, we aim for 3 to 4 here to try and provide some context, and specifically why would they have done a focus interview with these dads rather than just sticking with the structured interviews. Okay. If you can make a note of that, if you do have any questions at all, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.